We want to recognize this next speaker for his commitment to sharing his knowledge with the industry. He's created community of practices such as meetups and the hashtag One Tip Wednesday on LinkedIn, which has over 100,000 views. He's won Learning Professional of the Year Silver at the LPI's Learning Awards and previously served on the board of directors for the eLearning Network, supporting over 4,000 individuals in the e-learning industry. The friendly and generous mentor who will always be wearing the jazziest socks in the room, Mr. John Hinchcliffe. Dun, dun, dun,
Thank you very
dun.
much.
What's up, mate?
I'm doing really, really well, and I really appreciate being here. And congratulations on such a fantastic event.
Thanks for being here. We're stoked to have you. Right. Well, we're here to talk about some just-in-time training. So, training doesn't always need to be an e-learning course. So this discussion is about other ways to learn people that are just in time and basically at the point of need. So, John, to set the scene, have you got any examples or case studies that just demonstrate effective just-in-time training?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think one of the things that I've really seen is, this concept of just in time really reflecting how we live our lives at the moment. The fact is that when you need a solution, you usually go Google, you usually go YouTube. And that's very much going away from the traditional model of you need to go on a course. You need to go on a face-to-face course. You need to do a 1 hour e-learning course.
Yeah.
And so a massive thing that I've seen both me personally using, but also when I talk to organizations and learners, is really the use of Google, the use of YouTube, the use of talking to people and utilizing MS Teams.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to this, when we look at kind of bigger case studies, you have such organizations as ASOS, which is an online fashion retailer. And they had a gentleman come through to them for their L&D called Adam Harwood, who is exceptional when it comes to this theory of really resources rather than courses. And he really looked at the onboarding process. And when we think about onboarding for me, the traditional sense is somebody turns up on day one and you absolutely pile information into their brains. You inform them about who the C-suite are, the history of the company, and the stuff that they really need that they're going to use in 2 weeks, they've completely forgotten because we're fallible as human beings. It's one of the things that we are. So he really looked at that and actually talked to the organization, talked to the people and said, okay, before day one, what would you want to have known? And it was things such as, what do I wear on my first day?
Mm.
Which, if you would have thought as a traditional e-learning kind of concept, it wouldn't be one of the questions that you'd be posing. So it's really talking to your people. And for that, it's, if you turn up on day one and you turn up in a 3-piece suit and everybody's there in ripped jeans and a t-shirt, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. You're also going to be stressed. You're stressed anyway when it comes to day one because
Mm.
you're in a new environment. You are the newbie. And we know that when you are stressed, that actually affects your ability to learn. So you are in the most inefficient ways of actually being able to learn. So being able to flip that and 2 weeks before you actually start, sending you through an email and saying, look, we've spoken to people who previously started. Here's the things that they wish they would have known. So it's not providing them of how to do the job, but it's the things that they might want to know. So what should I wear? Where do I need to go? Who do I need to ask for? Also, being able to provide them with the resources of who do they need to talk to?
Yeah.
Because one of the scariest things, and also we're seeing this now, is when we're doing virtual and remote working now, as you're onboarding, who do I talk to if I've got IT issues? Who do I talk to who is going to be my buddy to help me?
Yeah.
So it's really looking at resources for those points of need and really being user centered rather than program centered. I'm really thinking about what are the issues, what are the challenges that people are facing, and how do we provide them something that is short, sharp, to the point, and gives them an answer rather than making them go through a 30.
Interesting. Interesting.
and you're really looking at what are the challenges people are facing. So
Mhm.
rather than trying to bunch things up into a course, it's really dissecting that and looking at what are the things that people are struggling with. So
Mhm.
that could be you're looking at data, but it's really you're talking to people. So are you having focus groups that are available to you? Is it that you actually have information from one-to-ones? Is it that the business knows? Is it that the C-suite has information and knowledge of what the issues are that people are facing?
Mhm.
Is it that there is consistently an issue that you face within your role? And then instead of it being a course, so let's say, for example, rather than it being a manager's course that you take and then you maybe implement some of those stuff in the next 3 months, it's saying, okay, if you do have particular issues as a manager, so let's say, for example, you have to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Here is whether this is SharePoint, whether this is your own internal platform, if it's a website, if it's an MS Teams channel relating to that. Here is a short 2-minute video of best practice.
All
And
right.
then
All
it's
right.
talking to your subject matters.
You're leading me on to something I want to do. So we're going to play a game. John, are you ready? I hope that's a strong coffee
Gosh,
because you need to be on your
it
toes.
sounds like Saw. Do you want to play a game?
I was going to use that voice, but I was worried that I'd get copyright problems, so I didn't do it this time.
Okay.
So, players at home, you can join in too. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, John, an example of a just in time resource. And players
Okay.
at home, you will hear this too. And I want you, John, to give me an idea of how it can be used to train people. Okay.
Okay.
And Hannah, I'm going to throw to you in the chat as well, see if they can beat John's idea. All right. So the first just in time resource is a poster. What could that be used to train?
That could be used for recycling. Have it next to a recycling bin to influence
Ooh,
people to recycle.
nice one. This is quick fire. Okay. What about an app?
An app could be used in store for your clothing company to inform people of sales and procedures and refunds.
Ooh, I like it.
That's pretty specific, isn't it?
Wow, this is good. What about your peers?
So peers could be best practice and also fitting in.
I like that. I like that. Sharing a file, maybe through Skype
Sharing
or
a
Teams or something.
So sharing a file could be new policies and procedures, and also could be making sure that version control is in place.
And augmented reality.
This is a cool one. And this is GE who've been actually doing this. So this can be used for your engineers in order to actually have them guided as to how to create something. And also that would help health and safety. So you're reducing the amount of people that could get injured.
You're doing very well. QR code.
Boiler repair.
I feel like this is
That's
something you've experienced yourself because that's very specific.
Yeah, my boiler broke the other day, so.
Does it have a QR code on it?
No, but this was the thing that I was thinking of. If it had a QR code on there, then you could have a manual associated to that, and then you could understand how you were supposed to fit it.
Look at that, people. This game's working out so well. What about voice technology?
So I think soft skills. I think, when we think about some people are really confident, some people are introvert, and being able to mirror those auditory examples of how to do something effectively. So it could be how to present more confidently.
I like it. One that I know that you do well and you like is video.
Video, goodness, everything. But then you come into so many different parts of video. So let's say, for example, video VLOOKUP. So yesterday I needed to learn how to do VLOOKUP, typed in on YouTube, and it gave me VLOOKUP in 1 minute.
Very cool. Hannah, how's the chat going? How are they playing along at home?
Oh, they are absolute legends, Kim.
Oh, yay.
So we had events for the app. We had peers could be the best coffee place. QR access to instructions, QR COVID check-in.
Oh.
Voice, how to use this device, for example, a new piece of hospital equipment. Video, how to use headset, QR, gym workouts, and video, what does my role look like in the real world?
Ooh,
Brilliant.
well done.
Well done.
All right, John, you get to have payback on the audience this time. So, John, you get to now say something that you need to train. So, pretend you're the client and you want the audience to give you some just-in-time resources that you could help you train that in your organization of hinchcliffe.org.uk.
Goodness. Okay, so let's start it off. So onboarding.
All right, chat. What just-in-time resources would you propose for John's onboarding solution in his fake organization?
hinchcliffe.com.org.
We'll give you a couple of seconds. So onboarding, new organization, I guess there's a bit of a life cycle there. So it's first day, first week, first month, up to probation. Sometimes onboarding goes for 6 months, 12
6 months.
Yeah. How they doing, Hannah?
All right, it's coming through.
Okay.
We have a welcome kit. We have QR codes with information pop-ups.
Mm-hmm.
MS Teams channels for each class, welcome videos,
Yes.
and chatbot, knowledge base, QR code scavenger hunt, videos, company values, a buddy, a web app with links to various resources, and QR codes, information brochures, simulations, learning steps to new processes, mentors. It's just on fire.
Well, people on
Brilliant.
fire, we got more for you. Get your typing fingers going quickly. Let's go for another one, John. What would you like to train next in your organization?
Okay, you work in a call center. You have a difficult conversation with a customer and they want to make a complaint. What do you do?
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we'll play the elevator music now while we wait for the chat to go off. Go on, sing, John.
Dun dun da 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 da.
And Hannah, you can free us from this torture anytime soon. Just joking.
We have put the phone down. Great one there.
I like that.
That's just in time. That's a result.
We had Runaway and Cry, which I also thought was
Just in time training people. We
use a knowledge base, talking to peers on how to escalate it, listening to previous complaint calls. Peers, we got some LOLs happening in the chat. That's where we're at.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, thank you, everyone. We're happy to have you participate. But we've set the scene now. I think you have a bit of a picture of what just-in-time training is about. So let's dig deeper and speak a bit more about it, John. If it needs to be effective, I guess we need to go find out, where people are hanging out and where they go for the information and be there. So how do you find this stuff out?
For me, there's quite a few different places. So previously I mentioned focus groups, and that's something that ASOS did. So really look at who is your target audience and really talk to them. It's whether that is the C-suites, whether that is the people in the trenches, really understand and talk to them about what are the pain points, but also look at data and also observe. You had Kate Pasterfield talking about data today, and really some things that I've spoken to her and seen a few of her presentations is, what is relevant data? What's interesting data? So interesting data might be that you have a video and it gets 1 million hits. Congratulations. But the data actually shows that people only watch 5 seconds. So then you need to look into the why. So it's really looking at what are your platforms? Where are people going? What are the areas that they mainly utilize? A big thing that we've seen, especially in COVID, is a migration and utilizing MS Teams. That's where your people are going. That's where they're communicating. And the fact is that MS Teams is far more than just a communication tool. It is there and able to actually help you use MS Teams streams so you can actually create user-generated content. So you can have somebody give a face-to-camera short presentation about what works well for them. Maybe it's just some guidance. Also upload into there. Maybe it's a screen share that you've done through PowerPoint now. allows you to screen record. So you don't need Camtasia. You don't need anything fancy. It's about utilizing what you have. So it's talking to people about where they are, what they utilize, looking at the data about what people utilize. Do you have a great email opening rate? Fantastic. Look how you can utilize that.
Yeah.
And look at what is actually at hand to you and how do you make it as seamless as possible? Because that's the biggest thing for us now is we love convenience. That's why we have Amazon Prime. That's why we have Uber. We want an answer now. How can you give it to people?
Yeah. Do you know what successful open rates and some of that stuff is? Because I think if I think of like sales, I believe it's something like if 2% of your audience will purchase, so that means you have to go out to way more. So what is some effective open rates and how can you improve that sort of stuff?
I think you've really got to look at what are you actually providing. That's the biggest thing. Rather than it being seen as spam, what value are you bringing? And for me, that's really looking at what solutions are you providing.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about emails, just providing an update, okay,
Yep.
if there is not a lot of people opening it, then why are you doing it? So if you are in maybe the 10%, if you're in the 15%, maybe even the 20%, why are you doing it? Because there's 90, 80% of people that aren't utilizing it. So what can you then transform that into? And don't be afraid to experiment. That's one of the biggest things in this game. And that's one of the things that I love about L&D is we have the ability to experiment. We can look at where people are going and what can we offer. And also just mix things up, find out what's working with people, what resonates with people. I think, when we look at access and we also look at social media, video does very well. Also personal stories, things coming from people does very well. So is it that it is personal tips?
Yeah.
That actually informs people rather than a course that's short and sharp and it's from a trusted source. And so it's very much you talking to the organization, talking to the people and being able to filter that. So I think that's the key thing is test, experiment. And if something doesn't work, kill it.
Oh, that would be tricky. Okay. What questions can we ask ourselves to focus on resources and not courses?
How are people going to use this?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the answer it's solving? And when is it going to solve it? I think that's a massive thing. I think, I've come from over 10 years of learning and I started out face to face.
Yep.
And so we bombarded people with all the knowledge that you would need in the future.
Yep.
And that's so ineffective because we forget. Life makes us forget. Work makes us forget. So it's really looking at that and looking at what is the need to know information.
Yeah.
Okay. At that point, what is the nice to know information that you are potentially going to need in the future? And how can I make sure that you know where to go when you need it? And how is that going to answer the question that you have when you need that answer? So that's the biggest thing for me is it's not about making you good enough for the future. It's about making sure you've got it when you need it.
Yeah. Very cool. Hannah, have we got some questions from the audience?
We do have a question. So Emma has asked, would we include nice to know in just-in-time training resources?
Oh.
For me, it's a yes. It's looking at your people and really talking to them about what is going to help them. Because nice to know, somebody's going to need to know that at some point. So you'd rather them have the correct information rather than something that people haven't touched for 6 months and then they have the wrong information and then it's done wrong. And then how does it get rectified? So it's how do you provide the right answers for people at that right time? So for me, yep. And thanks for the question, Emma.
Any others, Hannah?
I think it'd be really useful if you could share an example of an impactful resources solution that you've created yourself or that someone you know has created.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big ones for me that I've kind of looked at through all the research over the years is from Nick Shackleton-Jones when he was at British Petroleum. So they were having a traditional training system. So they were taking on board about 6,000 people a year, and about 300 would finish the training, which is massive. I mean, what is that? That's like 5%.
Nothing.
And so, yeah, it's nothing. And so it really was a case of talking to people, having focus groups and talking to people about, well, why didn't you finish it? And also what could be done to make it better? So really turning it on its head and saying, okay, well, let's build a platform then and give you the resources of how do I do X? So how do I fill in my expenses form? How do I set up my laptop? So really taking that approach first. And so taking that approach, listening to people, updating as things progress, because businesses change, businesses shift. And so taking that approach, and then after 4 years, I believe it's had over 1 million hits and it's become one of the main websites. So giving people the information that they need when they need it around the subjects that they actually need, a really, really big success, especially with that many hits.
I think that language that you're using there is really important as well, like need. What do I need right now in this moment? And that's why it's called just-in-time training. Is there something, what's a challenge you've come up against recently? You had your boiler example. But what's a challenge you've come up with through recently and you were able to solve it through what kind of just-in-time training? Can be personal, professional, whatever.
Oh, let's go for the personal. So I've just moved country. So I've just spent 18 months living in the United Arab Emirates. And so in order to actually get out of the country legally and not get myself barred for the future, you have to complete quite a few different things and closures. Now, there's a lot of stuff. And to do that individually and to research is quite a long element. But there was a checklist. Checklists are some of the simplest things that we could ever do. But at that point of need where I needed to actually know what did I need to do and also make sure for my mental state that I was doing it, a checklist. And I was just going through it and just making sure that it was done. So, just in time training, this is something that I talk about with people is it doesn't need to be something grand. It can be as simple as it could be a poster to influence a decision. It could be a checklist just to make sure that people are going through the steps and that they're completing things. And the proof is in the pudding. I came through to the country and I've not been banned. So it's A-okay.
That's cool. And you're right. It doesn't need to be a fancy, expensive thing. Could just be a Word document is your checklist, so it's serving the need. There's that word again, as opposed to the flashy, shiny thing. I feel like you would have a lot of tools that you think are really awesome for curating things that are just in time and not having to go create from scratch. What's your recommendations?
So YouTube is incredible. Even though it's so open to utilize, it really is just such a great resource because you have things taken care of there. So with that, it's very much you curating. So you have that manual process. You could utilize tools such as Anders Pink, which is a curation tool, which helps you curate from a whole bunch of sources that it already picks, but you can actually define where you want to actually obtain that information from. There is Filtered, which has Magpie, which is an AI-driven platform which curates content and allows you to tag particular resources that you've got and actually present those. I know really big event companies that are utilizing that throughout the world to be able to provide their people with the resources that they need. But then if we also take in terms of something that's quite simpler in also creation. So there's a company called Manual.to, and they're based in Belgium. And they work with companies such as Volvo. And they actually created a platform that initially was created as a children's book tool, which is something very random. But what it allows you to do is upload a video or an image, upload text relating to that, and it will present that to people. But a great thing is, because they deal with so many different countries, it will automatically Google Translate. So if you
Wow.
are, in Belgium, Belgium has three main different languages that people speak. So it's how do you actually provide different translations at the
Yeah.
point of need? But it's just something so simple. So let's say, for example, something that they work on is if you're working on a railway line and you are on your own or you're in a team of two and you need to understand, how do I make sure that I fit the railway line correctly? You 100% want to make sure that that's done correct, because there's big consequence. So
Yeah.
with this, it allows you to bring up for that particular task and just a step-by-step, short picture, short video,
Yeah.
piece of text, just go through process, done. So it becomes that almost checklist. And
Yeah.
they've recently won awards because it's so simple but so effective.
That's really cool. Any more stories of some really effective just-in-time training that you've come across in your lifetime?
In my lifetime, lifetime and also research. So Vodafone, they actually
Yeah.
have a great app. So, one of the things that we were talking about with the quickfire round. So Vodafone in-store employees have access to an app. And what this allows them to do is very much have their own internal Google answers. So, how much is a plan for a 128 megabytes iPhone 11?
Yep.
Okay, let's get you the answer rather than me having to go off. Or can
Yeah.
somebody who is residing in the UK, who's a non-UK resident, purchase one and take it to the Isle of Wight? Okay, let's go through that rather than it being a call to a contact center or guessing who might know the answer. It's being able to provide people with that. And that has become one of their most utilized elements, because then you are allowing your service team the ability to focus on customer satisfaction, customer just discussions, and really being there in the moment with them rather than having a ton of knowledge, which they might not utilize at that moment in time.
Yes.
So, lots of different variations that you can go with.
That's really cool. All right, I'll give you a break for a second. Have a drink there. Hannah.
Thanks.
I have a question, Kim, if
Yep.
that's okay, from the audience. It's a
No,
really good question.
no, I'm only messing. Go on.
Not allowed. So yeah, it's a really good question. So some of the resources mentioned, such as checklists, for example, aren't always trackable on an LMS. This makes some clients feel uncomfortable. How do you overcome this?
I like that.
I think then you are then looking out of the LMS and you're actually looking at KPIs and also business performance. So you are actually looking towards what is the intent of the resource and is it actually doing what it's set out to do? So if, let's say, for example, you are seeing within a organization that you have big problems with GDPR, at what point is GDPR being breached? What resource are you actually presenting at that point of need? And then being able to actually look at how many breaches are taking place. So looking outside of the learning management system. And it's really us as L&D being able to look at the business rather than just looking internally. And I know this is something that we as an industry, as individuals, are really trying to do, is become more part of the business. And it's really making just in time part of the business. So yeah, that's really where I focused on.
That's cool. Hannah, what else have you got?
So we have a question. Do you have a repository of the most useful resources for just-in-time learning?
So for this actual conference, I have put together just a few resources that really give you a nice insight into this as a concept and also the tools. So that will be within the application. And within there is a great podcast with Adam Harwood, who I previously mentioned, who really, for me, opened my eyes in terms of this concept and really made so much sense. So he has previously been a learning business partner at ASOS, also at Revolut, which is a new startup bank, and now he is head of learning at D&D London, which is fine dining. So a really broad range of areas, but really makes a lot of sense. But then also some more insights from Nick Shackleton Jones, so really giving more insight into that British Petroleum example, but also just giving a bit more rounded knowledge on what could be done with this and how might it be able to be applied by you within your organization, because we're all different in our organizations and it's what really works for them, your people, and your circumstances, really.
Mm. What questions do you ask to be able to find out that information?
Where are your people? What are they doing? What are their challenges? If an organization says they don't know, then you go in focus groups.
Yeah.
So actually talk to the people and really make it clear that this is a free to speak discussion. I think, unfortunately, when we look at business, if you are not capable of doing something, you are punished. If you don't know something, you are punished. And unfortunately, that has come from decades of education and us thinking that everybody should know everything. But it's really about us utilizing a growth mindset and saying, you're not there yet, but we're going to help you. So it's very much looking at that and just asking people, what are your challenges? Where do you struggle? And also asking for solutions. Does somebody have something? Does somebody have a rebuttal book that they utilize? Okay, that's brilliant. How can we then take that from a version 1 to a version 2? Because you have people that just survive in their jobs. You have people that thrive in their jobs. What's that difference? So it's user generate. Really look at what is taking place and talk to those people. Document, where are people going? What are they utilizing? Why are they utilizing it? And then how can you give it to them? And then track, really look at, those focus groups. And then once you've actually implemented, has it worked?
Yeah. There's a lot of times I think they should go talk to people, because when things aren't working in an organization, if a process is broken or something like that, people have already created their own just-in-time resource to solve the problem. So it's actually there. It just needs to be communicated or distributed wider. Yeah. Did you want to say something on that? Otherwise, I'll go to the audience.
I mean, that was the whole point of One Tip Wednesday for me.
Yeah.
So One Tip Wednesday was born out of the Ice Bucket Challenge, because it encouraged people to do stuff, because it was, you gave one tip, you nominated 2 people. And so it put onus on them. The whole point of this was people have these tips. People have experience, life experience. And it's how could you have something that was unique that would encourage people to share things? And so it was people talking about sketchnoting. We had such people as Laurie Niles Hoffman. We had Carl Kopp, who is speaking at this conference. And it's people giving those insights and those tips that previously wouldn't really get out to people.
Yeah.
And so it was so enlightening. And I did it just because I have a lot of tips and I wanted to get that information out, because there is no point in dying with a bunch of tips. So be free, be open. And that's hit over 100,000 views on LinkedIn and Twitter. So how can you do that internally? I took that to United Arab Emirates University, and they created Top Tip Thursday. And so it was faculty being able to provide a tip in order to help their actual fellow peers. And so we had such things as feed forward rather than feedback.
Very cool.
So it's what's right for your organization, and just test.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of organizations at the moment are looking for the opportunity of community of practice, and something like that One Tip Wednesday is an example where we are just putting it out there and it may help someone. And things like meetups and groups, Slack groups, that kind of stuff, they're all examples of just-in-time training. Have you got any other ideas around community of practices that you've seen work well, or things that communities of practice are doing that demonstrate effective just-in-time training?
And that's one tool that we haven't mentioned is Slack. Slack has really exploded recently. Slack and Discord have been absolutely fantastic, because it is providing knowledge dumps at that point that people have them, but also it's the searchability. Being able to search for an answer is the absolute key at the moment. And so I participate in a number of Slack channels, and it's incredible that if you need to get information, then you can search. If you need to talk to people, you can just put it out there and people will come back. And so it's really, how can you do that internally?
Yeah.
So if you don't have Slack, because some organizations are very advanced in technology, some aren't. So it's, what do you have? Do you have an email group? Because that's your tech. Or is it MS Teams? And it is, how do you have that user generated and just peer-to-peer learning? Just how can you utilize that?
Mm.
And it's a really, really great element to have. I mean, you have such organizations such as Fuse, Universal, who have user generated content within their app in order to provide actual stories. You have,
Yeah.
if you need some guidance in order to actually be able to speak on camera, you have tools such as StoryTagger. So actually being able to have a teleprompter on your mobile device in order to give you assistance to actually, talk on camera, because a lot of people get very afraid when it comes on camera.
And Hannah, any questions from our audience?
We have another question from the audience. So Emma would like to know, just-in-time resources need to be easy to update. How do you fit this into your analysis and design process?
Ooh.
So really looking at implementation and really having a team assigned. And by team, it needs to be a team. So one thing that I've done a lot in my career is I've been a team of one, and I've become a single point of failure. So it is, who can you deputize? And also, when do you actually set in place your periodic checks? So it's going to depend on an organization, depending on what you're dealing with, but also really putting this into your implementation plan. So really looking at a point of change, who takes care of this? Where are they notified? Who gets notified? So it's being able to put that into your actual implementation plan, and just also having it as, we talked about checklists. Is it that you have a monthly checklist? So you're saying, are we up to date? Has it been done? Have we also done the version control? Because version control is a killer.
Yeah.
And that's something that really, really hurts a lot of organizations.
I think if we look at something like Kat did a session on day one around using the app, so Glide as the app program, and not needing to be a developer to actually update that. So you can use Google Sheets. So it's very accessible. You can, most people would know how to jump into a Google Sheet and change a link or an email address or a phone number or, I don't know, a date or something like that, where you can make things very up to date, very easily accessible for anyone to make those changes. And as well, it could be something like a Word document or the checklist that you're referring to as well. Yeah.
I mean, one of the weirdest ones that I've ever actually created. So I worked for a university in the UK, temporarily freelancing, and they had new terminology that was being utilized they were migrating 28 systems into one, and the terminology was being changed. And they had it originally on just a piece of paper. But the problem was, one of the new words was the same as one of the old words, but for a different thing. And people were constantly getting this wrong.
Yeah.
And they kept on complaining that I'm seeing it on the sheet and I'm being guided to it, but it's wrong. So I made a cube, a physical paper cube that had the difference, so the old terminology and the new terminology of the different terms on each side, so that you were only getting the one that you were looking at when you looked at the cube. It went down an absolute treat. But then we talk about version control. When they made changes, so thankfully I only made 8 of these cubes. When they made changes, they said, look, we adore the cube concept. How do we change it? So then I made it a virtual cube where I used Paint 3D in order to actually make the cube sides and print on the different terminologies. Bobbed it into articulate storylines that I could use sliders in order to turn the cube. So we're not into anything fancy, just really basic. So the different images of the cube as it turns, and people absolutely went crazy for it because when they needed it, they could access it anywhere and just go to it. So, when we talk about all the different times of, just-in-time training, a 3D cube was actually a really good one.
That's interesting. We have to, before we wrap up, we have to talk about chatbots. I don't know how we have missed that, but I just feel like they're so awesome. They're a brilliant example of just-in-time training. Any thoughts or insights on them as a training resource?
I think if you can do chatbots well,
Yeah.
so really get AI really nailed, I think especially for me, I'd be looking in the academia area.
Yeah.
So turning your chatbot into a tutor. I
Oh,
think
I like that.
that's going to be an absolute killer if that
Yeah.
can really happen, because I think, when we look at academia, it's very difficult because you have one person talking to people and it's a large group. And how do you sort out the introverts? So by being able to have a chatbot that is really educated, that has the knowledge of where the different pieces of information are
Yeah.
and can really help people, I think that could be a real game changer.
Wow. I feel like that's almost like I product placed one of the sessions tomorrow, but I didn't. But Myra Roldan is doing how to design for voice. And so I think that chatbot kind of conversation versus doing something for an Alexa skill, which is what she's going to focus on, writing for that, where it is the soft skill and that what you say, like a coach. Oh, the potential is just crazy. So that's very exciting. Well,
Good times ahead.
yeah. It is. We're in a great industry. It's very cool. Listeners, viewers, take some time to reflect just in time. Like, it's not all about e-learning. It's not all about face-to-face, blended learning, all that kind of stuff. How can you go and meet the needs of your learners at the point of need, where they are, where they need the information, where they're actually motivated to want to do something with something? Have a think about how you're going to change that up. John, thank you for being a great speaker and guest here today. We appreciate you.
My pleasure. And thank you for having me. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing with this conference.
Thanks, mate. Thank you for everyone for being part of this session.
Thanks all.